Wisconsin is a state known for its great beer.
And behind every great beer is great brewing, great people, and great stories.
On this show, we're going to be talking to the people that are responsible for making the beer that we love.
We're here at HopCat in Madison, and this is Behind the Brews.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome. I'm Mark Alfred. I'm here with my partner in beer, Fred Swanson, and we're outside of Lake Louie. We're about to meet the head brewer, Tom Porter. He is one of the founding fathers of the craft beer industry here in Wisconsin. He's somebody who I really look up to, and he's somebody who has great insight. So let's go inside and meet him.
Tom, thanks for having us out to Lake Louie on a Sunday morning. We really appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about the legend of Lake Louie. You messed around on this land as a kid, didn't you?
Yeah, this land was my Uncle Louie's, hence the name. There's a pond out back of the brewery and the house that's affectionately known as Lake Louie because that's where we all went skinny dipping in high school. And he was the guy that'd come chase you out with a shotgun. That's how it got its name.
As one of the founding fathers of the craft beer industry in Wisconsin, what was it like to start in the business?
It was a different time. We started in the fall of '99. Our first batch of beer was January 2000, and that doesn't seem like a long time ago, but in the industry in the Midwest, it really was. I would go into these little country bars and say, hey, I just started a brewery, would you like to tap my beer? I wasn't doing any bottling at all, just kegs. And I'd go in there with samples in 20-ounce plastic pop 7-Up bottles. I'd drink the pop, wash it out, fill it up with beer, and take it to these bars. And they didn't want anything to do with me. They was like, no, we already have 3 tap lines. We got Bud Light, Miller Lite, and something else, Leinenkugels. That's it. We don't do craft beer. And so out here, it was a different world. It was a lot of work that first year. We self-distributed for the first 9 years, which is kind of unheard of anymore. People, the first thing you do is go get a distributor agreement. Whereas I had an old 4-door Geo Prizm that I would put half barrels in the back seat, 2 of them at a time, seat belt them in, take them to the bar, unload them, come back, get 2 more, go the other direction. And that's how the empire of Lake Louie started. And my first year, I brewed 136 barrels in a year. We do that in a week here now, so yeah, different times.
You have staked a lot of your former brewers into the game where they've opened up their own business, and you've retained some fantastic brewers here in Wisconsin. Talk about how important and how proud you feel in that moment when those guys move on to the next thing in their lives.
Yeah, it's been one of those deals, but remember, I can preface this by saying when I started this brewery, there were Randy Sprecher, certainly Kirby Nelson, Dan and Deb Carey, you know, they were paying it forward. You know, it was one of those deals where I went to when I was first building the first incarnation of the brewery, I went to the Brewers Guild meeting to see what I was getting into, you know, and they all kind of put their arm around me and said, hey, if you need something, holler. You know, so they were paying it forward. And I just took that as a cultural thing, that's what you do. And so everybody that's ever worked here, a number of them have started their own breweries and are successful. Tom Lenners, who's the head distiller at Wallersheim, worked here too, you know, great guy, great brewer. Sorry he's in the whiskey business now, but you know, now with how the industry is maturing, perhaps in hindsight, I should have been a real jerk to those guys and not shown them anything because they're fighting for the same shelf I am now at the liquor store. But it's all good. It's been a wonderful ride. In a former life, I was an engineer, and I worked for the auto industry. And if I got caught having lunch with someone that, let's say I was working at Chrysler at the time, and if I got caught having lunch with somebody that worked for Ford, that was my job. Just like that. There was none of that talking stuff going on. And this is, when I got in the brewing industry, it was absolutely, completely 180 degrees opposite. It was, we were all fighting the collective David fighting the Goliath of the mega brewers. And so we all decided that we worked together on this one. And it's still that way for the most part.
Do you have any regrets or any things that you would change as far as creating your brand?
The brand, no. It was a very organic thing to build this brand. I think that, again, it was a different time. I built my brand one account, one beer drinker, one tap line at a time. And that's kind of how I got a great brand recognition on the street, and we still have that. Now, if I were to start a brewery today, yeah, the first thing what I regret is that I started really small, and I should have taken a bunch of people's money from investors that I had no intention of ever paying back and built a lot bigger brewery that was a lot more efficient from the start. We've worn out Sawzalls tearing things apart that we had built a few years previously in the infrastructure of this business. It's, yeah, if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't use all my own money, I know that, and I would definitely start with a nice new shiny, you know. Our first system was made out of dairy tanks.
You had the amazing opportunity to partner with somebody in the alcohol industry when they came to you and said, would you do something in a shot and beer kind of a definitional packaging with Bullet and Tom Bullet? Talk about that relationship and how that's evolved over the last year or two.
Yeah, it's been a 2-year event. How it all started was that I was, Frank Beer is my beer distributor. They have a liquor division, and the liquor division, Frank Liquor, sells Bullet. So I'm walking into the front door of the distributorship there, and one of the reps from Bullet is walking out of the front door. And it just was one of those moments, you know, like, well, we've just come out of a meeting and your name came up. Oh, let's go back in the building and talk about that. And so it just fell into place, because what they were looking to do was to pilot in the Madison market, not Wisconsin, but just Madison, was to do Bullet, because they make Bullet Bourbon and Bullet Rye. And they were looking to find some local brewer that would do this 5-pack of beer and a shot and a beer night thing on tap. I happened to be in the right place at the right time. And so last year we did that, and we did a version of our Warp Speed Scotch Ale that had Korean red ginger in it. But we tried really hard to get a beer that worked on the palate with a sip of bourbon and a sip of beer and a sip of bourbon and a sip of beer, and really try to make them complementary on the palate. It worked.
Tom, I'd like to thank you very much for bringing us out here today and getting some of your insights. We really appreciate getting to know you a little bit better. I'd like to thank HopCat for making this all possible. I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for being with us today. And if you need additional information, just go to isthmus.com/BehindTheBrews and say cheers.
Thanks, guys.